Hey everybody, this is Michael Gatewood, and I'm doing a project on being able to do a page curl. This is going to be a series of how-tos in Photoshop on specific needs that you might have for designers using Photoshop. So this is a big request on in some of my live seminars, and how to be able to use Photoshop as a design tool. The first thing, File New. Let's go in here and let's make a flyer. US paper, 8.5 by 11, resolution 300. We're going to work in RGB mode. Let's click OK. And what we really have is a piece of paper. But what we want is a page curl. And in essence, what we want is we want something that will allow us to look like the page is on our flyer or on our sheet, and the lower right hand corner has been pulled up, or the top corner. So let's go ahead and try this by going ahead and adding a layer, and then let's go ahead and fill with white by creating a rectangular marquee with no feather. The first thing I'm going to do is come in about 1/4 of an inch, get a rough selection, and let go. Once I've done that, let's fill, and I'm going to do it the slow way. Edit, fill, and let's get in here so we can see this. Edit, fill, and let's go with the foreground color and click OK. Now, you're not going to know it, but we've filled this layer. We'll call it paper with white. Now, let's go select, deselect, and then at that point we want to use transform. This gives us an idea of how the paper would actually curl over. So let's go Control T and right click and go to warp. Now we're going to grab this corner and we're going to pull it, and it's going to look very much like we're flipping this corner. Let's go ahead and make sure we've got it. There we go. It needed to catch up a bit. So let's see if we can do this now. There we go. Now this is the corner, and you can see that we flipped it, and this is more or less our page curl. So let's go ahead and hit enter, and that transform's taking effect. You're not really going to see anything, so let's turn off layer visibility so you can see how the paper is kind of warped and changed in that area. Just to show the effect a little better, and something we're going to be using is an effect called drop shadow in our layer styles. Now I can move the drop shadow and kind of position it where I want and change the size, and I can definitely soften the opacity to give it the feel of kind of coming off the page a little bit. Very faint line will be located over the top and the other side of the curl. Let's go in here and let's click OK. Now what we have is we have a, well, what looks like, I guess, a piece of paper that might have been cut. So now what we're going to do is we're simply going to go and create a new layer, and this is going to be the curl. So let's go in and put in curl, and I'd like to use the pen tool because it does the best job of creating a subtle page curl. What I'm going to do is simply kind of click here, create an anchor point, and then figure the point of the paper, and when I click, I'm clicking and dragging it to create what would be the start of that curl, where that paper would start to curl over. And we'll go ahead and hold down the Alt key to click on the other anchor point, so that now we can go over here and create the same curl effect that might be happening at the top part of the paper. And there we go. Now I'm going to hold down the Command key to kind of give it the kind of curl effect that would really kind of come into the paper itself and show that curl as if it's being lifted up. Now let's go ahead and hold down the Alt key and click on that other anchor point, and really we can be very rudimentary about the way we kind of come back to connect here, because this area will be clipped off. The only part that's going to be available for us to look at is the part of the page curl. Now what I want to do is go into the Pass panel. Now remember, when I was creating this path using the pen tool. I selected path up here, not shape, so that I can go in and make sure that I get a rough path or outline. Now I'm going to make a selection out of it by going to the Pass panel and going to the very bottom of the Pass panel to the selection option to load it as a selection. Now we're on a separate layer, and what I'd like to do is simply kind of airbrush in highlights as if it's the under part of a page. And what I'm going to do is simply go in here with a paintbrush, and let's find a good paintbrush for this, a nice soft round. There we go. And I'm going to spray lightly right over the top. Control Z is undo. In fact, we'll use our history to go further back. I am changing the opacity. I'd like to really make this very subtle. And let's spray over the top. And you can see how we've just sprayed over the top part of the paper. Now let's try the same thing at the bottom. It's going to be very subtle all the way down this edge of the image. Now I know that looks hideous, and if I go select, deselect, you're going to see we're way out of the outlines on this. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Command key and click on the paper icon in the layers, and I get a selection of the paper. So what I'm going to do is select and inverse so that I can go edit, cut, and cut off the excess spray. There we go. Now we have the excess spray cut away, and then at that point I can even move this curl down just a little bit. Maybe I like that a little bit better, a little better transition, and do the same process over again. Hold down the Command key, click on the paper icon, then go to the curl and go select, inverse, and then edit, cut to cut off any excess. And that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit and see that I've got a nice cut. Be careful of a bead of white pixels that may show. I'm coming in to see that there's not really anything showing at this point. Now, one other little thing is a shadow that would happen on the paper. So what we're going to do is put in a little shadow on the paper that actually kind of comes into the curl. It would be under the curl but over the paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we'll get our selection active right now of the paper itself, but we're in the shadow. And remember, we're not going to paint on the curl because we're under that layer. And what I'm doing is creating a little soft shadow that would happen by merely kind of turning up that paper. It would create a little bit of a shadow effect. Now Control D is deselect, and you're going to see that I have a little shadow that's happening in our area, and a page curl that's coming up and flipping up around the edge. And this gives the effect of a page curl that we would have if we turned up a page on our in our design. This is going to allow for a lot of different effects, of which if I wanted to, let's go ahead and group everything that's within the page by just selecting and going Control G. And that is your paper curl. My suggestion is to save this as a Photoshop document so that you can constantly go in and create effects that you're looking for, such as being able to go in and maybe under your page curl putting in copy. Let's see if we can get a quick effect with this by simply going in and showing something that would be under. Let's go in there and give it a big point size and under. Let's go Control T and transform so that we can see that this would be under our page curl. And that gives you the effect that we're looking for as far as a page curl that would be under our curl with the shadow effect and allowing me to put copy over the top of the paper for anything that I would like to show. Remember, keeping it under the curl and under the curl here so that the effect looks fantastic. This is your page curl using Photoshop to create it on an 8.5 by 11 design. My name is Michael Gatewood. Don't forget to like and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, everybody.